In the know, non-stop Vikings talk. It's Purple Daily on Score North and ScoreNorth.com.
All right, Vikings Vent Line. We are less than a week away. It's finally almost here. The 2023 NFL Draft. Vikings on the clock at pick 23. I should say scheduled on the clock at pick 23. We'll certainly see what they end up doing, whether that's a move up, whether that's a move back. Maybe they'll just stay put. Maybe they'll actually just make their pick at 23. Plenty of scenarios in play for the Vikings, but we are inching closer and closer along. We're excited for the Surly Draft Party at Park Tavern here in the Twin Cities in St. Louis Park. So if you're in the Twin Cities or you're planning to come up for the draft party, last year we met people from all over the country. So if you're coming up, we're excited to meet you, excited to talk some football with you. Purple Daily Draft Party at Park Tavern with Surly Brewing Company. We can't wait for it. Of course, Vikings Vent Line is powered by our friends too at TCL. Enjoy more of what you love with TCL. Go get yourself a TCL television. If you can't make it to the draft party, you may as well get yourself a new big screen to watch it on at home. Go to TCL.com to learn more. And of course, Dennis Kirk and DennisKirk.com. Motorcycle parts, accessories, plenty of great stuff to get you ready for riding season here in the Twin Cities. Go to Dennis Kirk, a proud sponsor of Purple Daily and Score North for a long time. We appreciate them. It's Vikings Vent Line. We record these and do these every Sunday right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. Now, next week's going to be a little bit different, obviously, right? Because we're going to be coming the eve off the round 3 of the NFL draft. So we'll have a kind of a special Vikings Vent Line show this time next week on Sunday, since it's the day after the draft. So stay tuned for that. If you want to be included on that, please still shoot me an email as I always do. It's VikingsVentLine@gmail.com if you want to get in on that episode or any future episodes of Vikings Vent Line that take place on Sundays too, right here on the Purple Daily YouTube channel. And of course on Apple, Spotify. Score North app is a central hub for everything we do. So if you want to get in one of those future episodes, shoot me a note. It's VikingsVentLine@gmail.com. All right, I got my guy Brock in here. Brock is a season ticket holder to the Minnesota Vikings. He's in South Dakota. He still comes up to the Twin Cities every once in a while for a game or two. And you've been a season ticket holder since the TCF Bank days. Is that correct, Brock?
That is correct. Yeah, 2016.
Okay, nice. So you became, well, the stadium opened in 2016, right? The US Bank did. So did you become a season ticket holder before that?
Yeah. The first year in TCF was my first year, or the last year in TCF, excuse me, was my first year being a season ticket holder.
Were you unfortunately at the Blair Walsh game?
I was not actually at that game.
Probably good.
I mean, it would have been a great game to be at up until the very last second.
Oh, dude, that one was brutal. I had, I think I've told this story on the Purple Daily channel before. I had like horrible food poisoning that day, all day. So I had my head in a can all morning, all damn day. And I was finally starting to feel better around like the second half, fourth quarter. And I was like, okay. And they're marching down the field that final drive and as just having the worst possible food poisoning day. And I thought, okay, they're going to make the kick. They'll go on to the next round. This is great. The Vikings are on a path here. This is an easy path in the NFC. And a shankopotamus from Blair Walsh. Just that I would have suffered, honestly, and I've said this before too. I would have taken 8 more hours of food poisoning if that kick would have went in. Easily. And that was the worst bout. I've had food poisoning a couple times. That one was the worst. I would have taken it if Blair Walsh just would have made the damn kick, man. It was awful.
It was a chip shot too. That's the worst part about it.
Brock, so I teased off the top. We're getting closer and closer, obviously, to the NFL draft. The Vikings are at pick 23. Been asking a lot of Vikings fans over the last month or so what they want to see the Vikings do at the NFL draft. So I'm going to kick it to you here. What do you want to see the Vikings do at the draft?
Well, if KOC has a guy, if he has a guy that can be our next franchise quarterback, I want to go get that guy. If he falls a little bit, if we have to go all the way up to 3, if we have to trade up, I want us to go get our guy. If KOC says it's the guy, I don't think that happens though. I don't think we make the massive move up to 3. I don't think anybody falls that far. So I think we go wide receiver. If we pick at 23, I think we go wide receiver. I like Quentin Johnson, Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, a couple guys I like, but not sure if they're going to be there. I also wouldn't mind if we trade back, and not necessarily just to trade back to get more picks for this year's draft, but to stock up in 2024 to go get that guy, go get that franchise quarterback.
Interesting. So sticking with your franchise quarterback point there. So obviously there's Will Levis. He could be on the board. Hendon Hooker most likely will be there when it's his turn. Is there a quarterback that you're looking at that you want to see the Vikings get in the draft this year?
I think I just don't want Hendon Hooker. I don't think that's a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't think that's not where my mind's at. Like I said, if KOC says it's Will Levis, I'm on board with that. If Richardson falls, if CJ Stroud falls, I'm on board with that. But I just think it's on KOC to find us a guy.
Yeah, Hendon Hooker seems too much of a project for me at this point. And look, whoever they draft, they're most likely going to sit. So if it's Will Levis or whoever, Anthony Richardson, even in a pipe dream, like if it's one of those two guys, they're still going to sit behind Kirk Cousins for the 2023 season. But I'm kind of with you with Hooker's age, the ACL tear. I just think there's too many variables there. It scares me off, basically.
Yeah, it's going to be rough. And I don't think he's 23. I mean, I think he falls out of the first round, and without having a second round pick, I don't know how we end up with him.
So on the wide receiver front, so you mentioned Quentin Johnson, you mentioned Zay Flowers. So you're totally okay with getting one of these playmakers, right? You want to see someone maybe plugged and played also with Justin Jefferson, give you a little dual threat options. That way, you'd like to see a wide receiver get drafted. Yeah,
I mean, week one starter, ready to play. When we have Jefferson, new wide receiver, Hawkinson, Brandon Oliver, a running back, not necessarily maybe the starter from last year, but a running back.
Yeah, what about Bijan? Like Bijan Robinson is really high on a lot of people's draft boards. I know running back isn't like the most utilized position like it once was, but if Bijan does fall there, I've seen mocks where he's going in the top 5. I've seen mocks where he's at the end of the first round. I feel like everyone's kind of a little indifferent on him and a little probably scared again because it's a running back. But what about Bijan? If Bijan's there at 23, are you pulling the trigger? How do you kind of feel about that?
I don't know if I pull the trigger, but I don't know that I'd be super upset if it did end up happening. I guess that's my answer there. I don't know.
Yeah. If Zay Flowers, Addison, Quentin Johnson, I think if those guys are off, like if there's a run on wide receivers before the Vikings come up at 23 and Bijan is also miraculously there, that's the thing about these mock drafts, right? Like everyone does them and they're super fun. We love doing them on Purple Daily, of course, but the draft will play out a certain way. And guys that were consensus top 10 on a lot of big boards are probably going to be there at pick 20 or pick 23, wherever it is. So guys, their stocks rise and fall so quickly. I think if Bijan's there though, and all those wide receivers to your point are off the board, I think you got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, do you think we even make the 23rd pick though? I mean, realistically, even if Bijan's there, even if one of my wide receivers is there, do we even make the 23rd pick?
Yeah. I feel like there's only two paths for them to move up. It's if one of the quarterbacks falls, I mean, like in Levis or Richardson to like in the 12 to 15 range.
Which that's probably not happening, right?
Agreed. And then the other path would be, okay, let's say that run on wide receivers we were just talking about happens, again, in that teen range. And they're like, no, we really need one. We're going to move up 4 spots or 5 spots to go get Johnson or Flowers or whoever it is. Then I think it makes sense. I think that's the only way they trade up to get an offensive to get a quarterback or to get an offensive playmaker. Right? I don't think there's any other path for them to trade up. That'd be pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, but I think we probably end up trading back. Like we probably trade down to get more picks. I mean, with only 5 draft picks, it just seems like that's the way it happens.
And last year's class, obviously, they had Lewis Cine, they had Andrew Booth. Both those guys battled injuries, so did Caleb Evans. But they're obviously banking that rookie class from last year, so now they're sophomores, if you will, that class is going to step in here and also be contributors. Do you think Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth, do you think those guys are still going to be able to be relied upon and make some big plays for the Vikings in 2023?
I think so. I mean, I think they got to get a real chance on the field in a regular season game and get some reps. I mean, Cine got hurt, week 5 and barely played prior to that? I don't remember exactly when that London game, what week that London game was.
Week 4. So yeah.
Week 4. Yeah. It was like 4 or 5, that London game. Didn't get a lot of reps, like defensive reps prior to that.
Right. Yeah, it's there's a lot of different paths there, and there's a lot of different bets basically that Kwesi's making from last year's class of them being contributors to the on-field product of this year. They didn't really have much of a rookie impact class from last year because guys were hurt or just ineffective. So we'll see what happens there. We were talking Bijan Robinson, and obviously Dalvin Cook's future is still a little bit murky, right? Like just reading between tea leaves and comments, man, it does not sound like he's going to play at least on his cap hit. So they're exploring trade options. Hell, I've seen reports in ESPN they could just end up releasing him. What do you think here? Should the Vikings move on from Cook? Would you like to see a restructure and him on the team still in 2023? What do you want to see the Vikings do with Dalvin Cook?
I think we don't sign Madison to the deal that he got with the plan that Cook is on the roster come week 1. So, I mean, if we cut Cook, pre June 1st, we'll save $5 million this year. If we do a post June 1st designation, we can save $9 million this year. We only have $1.2 million cap as of right now. That's not even enough to sign our only 5 draft picks that we have. So, I mean, I don't see a situation that Cook is on the roster come week 1.
Yeah, me neither. And especially if they take Robinson, I think that's basically the writing on the wall that they're definitely going to move on from him, right? And they're probably holding out that, hey, maybe we can get a day 3 pick for him. Maybe we can leave out if they can get into a day 2. Good for you, but I think you would have done it by now, right? Like I think if you would have gotten like a 2nd or 3rd pick, you would have taken that to the bank and ran away, right?
Absolutely. I mean, even like get like a 4th or 5th for him. I mean, let's try to maybe get something back. I mean, do 4th or 5th rounders turn out? Not all that often, but I mean, there's examples. I mean, Diggs was a 5th rounder.
Yep.
I mean, you can get guys that are playmakers in those later rounds. They're lottery tickets, but they're picks. So I mean, I'd like to get something for them, but I think even if we can't get something for them, and this might be a draft day trade, but either it's a next Thursday trade, maybe Friday trade, trade Cook, get a pick. Even if it's in, like I said, get my 2024 pick. Let's get some capital in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's their move here. Like they're gonna obviously run this back to a degree. There's still a lot of good pieces in place on this Vikings roster, but next year kind of seems like, how do these, first off, I think step 1, right, is that sophomore class stepping in, and if like Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth and a Caleb Evans are studs for them, okay, that has helped make your defense overnight a little bit better. And then do you go after the franchise quarterback next year? Or if you have one that you drafted this year, is he ready to take that next step? They're kind of leaning towards they're putting their chips in for next year and maybe having as many, bites at the apple, if you will, with those draft picks for next year's draft. So if they do have to move up, if they do have, a classic Vikings 9 and 8 year where they're picking between 17 and 21, like they usually always are, makes life a lot easier if you have some ammo to move up into the draft next year. So yeah, a lot of things are obviously still in play here. You mentioned Alex Madison and his, basically signing being, are they going to move on from Dalvin Cook? But are you comfortable with Alexander Madison basically being the number 1 and bell cow running back for you?
He's never done it in his career. Obviously, he hasn't had that opportunity. He's had some flashes with some Cook injuries. He's had some flashes where he's shown that he can be, he can be a 100-yard rusher. 20 yards receiving, 30 yards receiving in a game. He's proven that he can do that. I think I am comfortable. I think with this offense, we'll spread it out. 2 tight end sets, Madison in the backfield. Ideally, a complement to Jefferson on the other side, and nobody's gonna know what's coming. We got Hockenson still. Resign CJ Ham. I'm actually on board with that. Let's have a fullback, but let's use the fullback though. Yeah. We didn't really utilize CJ Ham as a fullback last year. Let's actually use the fullback. So yeah, I think I am comfortable with Madison being the guy for a year. Let's see what he can do with a 17 game stint.
Hey, question on a little impromptu for you, but question on the offensive line. So obviously, the Vikings have 2 really good tackles, assuming that Brian O'Neill too comes back from that Achilles tear. And then obviously Christian Darrisaw, they brought back Eric Bradbury. Are you comfortable with the offensive line? Do you think that they maybe just need one more guard? Like how is an offensive line for the Vikings fans? I feel like is also triggering. Like they just, oh God, the offensive line, they're never giving them enough time, or they don't give enough space or anything like that. Are you comfortable with the Vikings offensive line as it's basically constructed right now?
I think if O'Neill can be the 2022 player again, yes, I am. I think that's the big if. I mean, it was only a partially torn Achilles, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, I think if he fully recovers from that, I think I am comfortable with our offensive line today.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind like one extra guard just for competition, or maybe as a fallback option if an Ezra Cleveland gets hurt or Ed Ingram just isn't
Mhm.
developing to what you want. So like I wouldn't be surprised even if like day 2 or day 3 one of those guys is drafted and maybe they push one of those guards to a different spot. But yeah, it's probably the best the line has looked since like honestly like Brett Favre, like when they
Yeah.
had Hutch and Matt Burke, or John Sullivan, I should say, and they had a really good offensive line then. Probably the best it's been in a long time, and it is a weak link system. Like it just takes one bad guy, Ed Ingram
Mhm.
being the culprit
Yep.
last
Yeah,
year,
yep.
where
Yep.
if you have one guy that can get pushed around, everyone else can basically sinks and drowns. So it's the best I have felt, but I wouldn't hate if they went out and got like one extra piece still on the offensive line to make it a little bit better.
Think you use one of our third rounders for offensive linemen. Is that where you're going with this?
Yeah, and I know a lot of Vikings fans probably don't want to hear that just because the defense has gaping holes and they got to fix that. But I mean, man, if we saw it, like the Eagles have an incredible offensive
Oh
line.
yeah.
The Chiefs, when they lost the Super Bowl to the Bucs, said, "All right, we're not going to let that happen again." They beefed up the offensive line. I wouldn't hate it. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it would be a bad pick by any means. Now, if you're reaching for someone, Willie Beavers, or a situation like that, or a Drew
Mhm.
Samia, different situation. But I think if they're able to find one extra piece in the offensive line, especially at day 2 of the draft, I would like it. Sign me up for it.
Yeah, I could get on board with that.
You mentioned bringing back CJ Ham. Obviously, it's been a lighter offseason just because the Vikings only had so much cap space and they had to say goodbye to some veteran players. But what has been your favorite move so far of the offseason, Brock?
So my favorite move is the Kirk Cousins contract restructuring, getting that down, not doing the typical extension that we've been doing, converting that extra money into a signing bonus, putting an end to a likely end, I'll say actually a likely end to Kirk Cousins and moving on from him. Not that he's been bad. I'm not a Cousin hater because he has been probably the best thing we've had, since that 1 year of Brett. Probably the best thing we've had at the position. But yeah, I'm excited that we're putting a timeline on this. Now we could re-sign him after this year. Obviously, that's still on the table if things don't transpire the way we want to. But yeah, I think the Cousins contract is my favorite offseason move so far this year.
So obviously, I feel like I'm contractually obligated because I don't think I've mentioned his name yet. But what do you make, because we've been talking about it a lot, what do you make of the whole, could the 49ers swoop in here and get an offer in for Kirk? What do you kind of make of those, that idea and those rumors that are flying around?
Yeah, I mean, I could get on board with it. I think that's the only team that Kirk would go to. I mean, as you guys talk about all the time, I mean, full no trade clause. He's not just going to go to anybody. But I could get behind a Trey Lance. I know you're not super high on Trey Lance, but I could get behind a Cousins Lance swap and maybe get a pick back as well. And then also rolling a half injured Lance out there week 1. I could get behind that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I've heard, I don't know the validity of it too. I've heard too, he actually got, he was healed a lot quicker than it was led on to believe. And even he was active and could have been activated for the playoff run and towards the end of the season for San Francisco. I've heard a couple conflicting things on that. I don't know if I buy it, but I don't mind them taking a flyer on him. I just don't think them getting Trey Lance to me is like, oh, they found their next franchise guy. Like, for sure, take a shot, right? Like, bring him in here and analyze and see if it works for you. But I'd rather you go out and draft someone and rather you figure that need somewhere else and not put all your eggs, I guess, your emotional eggs in the Trey Lance basket. That's what scares me.
Yeah, I mean, I got to watch a lot of Lance. He was a big rival of my local college here, being an NDSU boy. So I got to see a little bit of Lance that actually played college football for those Bison, and yeah, he seems like a good player. Seems like a good playmaker. So I would not hate to see him in purple.
Absolutely. Brock, before we wrap up here, obviously I like to give guys like a last chance to give a take. Any shout outs you want to make here before we wrap up here on Vikings Vent Line? Any last takes? Anyone you want to shout out here? Go for it.
I'd say my last take is the Vikings are going to go 10-7 this year.
Okay, I like it.
So little step down from where we were last year. I don't think you can get 11 one-score wins again in a season, back-to-back years. That's just a challenge. So yeah, I'm going 10-7. That's splitting the division, losing to the Chiefs, losing to the Niners at home, losing to the Eagles and Bengals on the road, and then getting wins elsewhere at home and on the road for all the other opponents. I'd like to throw some shout outs to those season ticket holder friends of mine down south in Texas, Greg and Sarah. And then I'd like to give a shout out to my boy T to the Y. He goes to the most home games with me, and another diehard Vikings fan.
I take is the Chiefs game that's on the schedule. That's a go-to, right? You gotta go see Pat Mahomes in person.
Absolutely, yeah. I went down to Kansas City when the Vikes were down there, and of course, I got to watch Chad Henne beat the Vikings then. Didn't even get to see Mahomes because he was injured, so that was lots of fun.
Yeah, that was too bad. Yeah, when they came out, the opponents, obviously, we'll see how the schedule plays out here in about, I think, like 3 weeks. I think it's shortly after the draft they announce the actual opponents or the schedule dates for the opponents.
Should be right around early May.
But yeah, the Chiefs game, Pat Mahomes' first trip here to US Bank Stadium. He was here obviously when Texas Tech made the Final Four, when Minneapolis held the Final Four here, I believe 2018, 19, I forget which year. And he was in town for that, but yeah, that Vikings game is probably gonna be electric. I'd put that one on primetime. Like, why not put it on primetime?
Yeah, it has to be a Sunday night, Monday night game, right?
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me at all. I think that one probably will be a primetime game. You may as well do so. Brock, thanks so much for coming on, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for making your debut too on Vikings Vent Line. If anyone wants to come on a future episode of Vikings Vent Line, shoot me an email. It's vikingsventline@gmail.com. Mackie and myself, no Judd Zolgad on Monday, but Mackie and myself, maybe a special guest too on Purple Daily next Monday. Hit that subscribe button. We'll see you at the Surly Brewing draft party at Park Tavern on Thursday too. See ya.